Hello and welcome to this episode of the Rambler podcast. My name is Jimmy Smith and I'm your host of the podcast. We're happy to have you joined with us today as we have a great conversation to share with you that I had with Sara Kallner. But before we get started on this episode of the podcast, I wanted to first acknowledge the following businesses and organizations who are partnering with us at the platinum level for the Academic Pathway Partnership Program. The Academic Pathway Program is what we put together to offer our students at Prep 5 different pathway opportunities to pursue an area of interest that they might have for further studies beyond their time at Prep or a potential career down the road for them, which we include these pathways for architecture and engineering, business, global studies, medical, and technology. So our goal is to be able to provide the students a higher level of preparation in these fields of study, and the following companies are partnering with us to help us do that and to support our students in these programs. These organizations are Duquesne University, Erie Strayer Company, Finnish Thompson, Gannon University, Hammett Health Foundation, Mercyhurst University School of Intelligence, Computing, and Global Politics, National Fuel, OEM Interactive, and Velocity Network. So again, we just want to say a big thank you to these organizations for supporting Prep and supporting our students as they prepare themselves at the next level in these areas of interest. If you want to learn more about how your company or organization could be involved with the Pathway programs, please reach out to me. My email address is jimmy.smith@cathedralprep.com, and I'd love to have a conversation with you about what a potential partnership with you could look like. But yeah, we just want to thank them again, and now we turn to this conversation with Sara Kallner as we get into this episode of the Rambler podcast. Hello everyone, my name is Jimmy Smith, and welcome to episode number 35 of the Rambler podcast, where we are passionate about sharing what makes Cathedral Prep the standard of excellence. And on this episode of the podcast, we're thrilled to have a very special guest on the episode. We have Sara Kallner here with us on the podcast. So Sara is a 1993 graduate of Villa Maria Academy, and she was born and raised here right in Erie. She attended St. Peter's Cathedral Center and Villa Maria Elementary for grade schools. And while she was a student at Villa Maria Academy, she played soccer, track and field, diving, skiing, and was a part of the Pep Club, Teenage Action Club, and the VMA newspaper. So you kept yourself pretty busy.
I did.
After her time at Villa, Sara went on to Allegheny College, where she graduated in 1997 with a degree in English. While in college, she also played soccer and lacrosse. After graduating from Allegheny, she then went on to work as a financial advisor for Prudential Securities from 1998 to 2003. And after that, Sara took a position at HBK Source Financial as a financial advisor as well from 2003 to 2006. But then in 2006, she began her career at Smith Provision, where she is now the Chief Operating Officer. Sara is the oldest of four sisters who all attended Villa as well. Emily LaCour, Villa class of 1996, Mary Weber, Villa class of 1998, Liz Weber, Villa class of 2001, and Caitlin Weber, Villa class of 2004. Sara married her husband Ray Kallner in 2001, and together they have three daughters. Olivia is a senior here at Prep, Eliza, a freshman here at Prep, and Camille, a sixth grader at OLP. So, Sara, we're honored to have you on the podcast. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks for inviting me, Jimmy. Excited to be here.
I know, absolutely. It's been a lot of fun. I came back to work for Prep in December of 2021.
Yes.
And at that time, you were now the chairwoman of the board, and it's been so great to see you through all the different events and the work you're doing here at the school, and just a big thank you for all your efforts to get the school to where we're at today.
Well, you are welcome, and it's wonderful to have you back at the school.
Thank you.
That was wonderful when you decided to return.
Yeah.
And you've done so many wonderful things for the advancement department and the event center, and it's really great to have you on the team.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I remember first meeting you probably back in 2018. I was the manager of the event center.
Yes.
You came to do some advertising with me then, and you weren't really a part of the board yet or anything. But it was just the start of the relationship,
yes.
to meet you and start that. And it's been great to know you through all these years. And
likewise.
All the exciting stuff happening.
Yeah. I remember when we met, when we started doing some advertising with the event center, and that was my first real introduction to what was going on at Prep, as Prep and Villa were then connected since my time at Villa as a student. So much had occurred, and it was just a little glimpse at all of the really exciting things that I think that we were on the cusp of starting at that point in time.
Man, well, good thing I made a good impression.
Yes, you made a great impression.
From meeting me to the chairwoman of the board.
Yeah, exactly. No, you were the launching pad, Jimmy, so thanks.
Totally kidding, but that's great to hear. Yeah, I remember first meeting you and all that stuff, and that's just it's so exciting to hear. And I'm sure we'll get into more of your story here as we go on the podcast. But can you talk to us a little about? You mentioned obviously graduating from Villa in 1993.
Yes.
Why did you even decide to attend Villa? What was it that was attractive to you at the time?
Yeah.
To go
3 decades ago.
Yeah.
3 decades ago.
Oh man.
Yeah. 30.
You said it, not me.
30-year class reunion. That was sticker shock when the postcard came in the mail this summer for the reunion. Really? Was that 30 years ago? I don't feel that old, but I guess I am. Yeah. So Villa. Thinking back to 30 years ago, so I am the oldest of 5 girls, and but my parents were not products of the parochial school environment. They were both public school kids, and in fact, my family, my sisters, my parents, myself, are not Catholic. We were raised in the Lutheran faith. Yeah. So actually, the church is the church right across the street. Lutheran Memorial was our home parish.
Yeah.
So, but my parents were really driven and motivated to send their daughters to a faith-centric parochial school. And so being the oldest, they started me at St. Peter's. When I was in 3rd grade, they moved me to Villa Maria Elementary, which was still downtown. It was the old Mother House campus, which was on, I think, 8th and Liberty, which ultimately moved to Mill Creek years later. But my 3rd through 8th grade education was at Villa Elementary. And my sisters followed suit there as well. Sister Margaret Frank, one of the SSJ, and I still see her to this day. She was the principal there forever, for years and years. And it was that time at Villa Elementary that my family and my sisters and I really connected with the charism of the SSJ community. And so continuing on to Villa was never even really a question or a debate. It was just really the natural progression of things.
Right.
We had such a wonderful experience with a lot of sisters, because there were a lot of sisters still teaching at that time.
Yeah.
It was really felt like a natural fit.
Yeah.
And it was. I had a lot of friends out of Villa Elementary who were also attending at the same time. And the spring before my freshman year, I was in 8th grade, Villa at that time announced that the next incoming freshman class would be co-ed.
Oh my goodness.
So yes, so
Wow.
So I moved on to Villa thinking initially that it was going to be an all-girls experience, and I was part of the first co-ed class of Villa Academy.
And then you look all these years later,
all these years
daughter,
later, and here we go. Right, exactly. And full circle moment in terms of my kids entered high school at basically the same time, where a very, very similar transition was occurring.
Yeah.
So in some respects, I think to me, that sort of transition never felt as monumental per se as it may have to others who didn't also already have experienced it in some form or fashion firsthand.
Right.
I remember, the summer going into my freshman year of high school, there was so much chatter about the fact that Villa was going to be co-ed and all of the awful things that might occur if it was. And it was a great high school experience, and I had not a lot of male classmates, but some male classmates who were wonderful, wonderful people.
Yeah.
And it was a terrific high school experience.
Yeah.
So in the back of my mind, I always felt like this transition, it was going to work out just fine.
Right. You've been there, done that.
Because we've been there, done that in some respects. Not to minimize how big of a sweeping change it was, because it was not just about making one school co-ed. It was effectively about merging an entire community into another, and that that's tricky.
That was
That's
the biggest
tricky, and there are a
difference
lot of
between the two.
feelings and emotions involved, and rightly so.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. A lot of things that were happening there, but it's so funny to hear that. I didn't realize that your
Yeah.
incoming class
Yeah.
was a part of that first co-ed experience. And so, like, when you were at Villa and you look back, like, you just, said, like, wow, 3 decades, 30
3
years.
decades, yeah.
What are some of the things that really stand out to you now that you're at Villa, like your time as a student, whether it's special memories from your time there, things you were involved in, or people even?
Yeah.
What are some of the things that stand out to you
Yeah.
about your experience there?
Well, I think there are so many things, and this is really unique to Erie, but also to our school communities, is the way that as you move through life, you have these full circle moments.
Yeah.
So my freshman homeroom teacher was Dan Eck.
Oh my goodness.
And Dan is still teaching here
Yeah.
at Prep today, and my daughters have moved through his classroom.
Wow.
So yes, and so Dan Eck at the time, when I walked in as a young freshman, he was a larger-than-life figurehead to me in the school, and he was very stern and all business, and actually probably a little bit of shock to your system as a freshman in high school, and a good thing to understand that this is high school now and this is serious business, and that sort of facade that he carries, I think, still carries to this day. But then you realize he has a very soft underbelly, and he is just an incredibly kind individual, supportive individual, and it's really wonderful to see that he's still at this school today.
It's one of the things that makes Prep, Villa so special
Yes.
is when you have people that
Yes.
are just committed to the mission.
Committed to the
People
mission.
like Dan that
Yes.
have been here for so long.
Yes.
And obviously you have your Bob Achille and
Yes.
Mr. Sidetech and all these different people.
Exactly.
But Dan's one, you're right, who's been here for so many years, and that's really cool
Yes.
moment for you to be able to have him as a teacher. Now your daughter's having him as a teacher.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and it's the same thing with Bob Achille. I mean, for years, I would hear from my male friends who went through Prep, graduates of Prep, stories about this unbelievable figure, Bob Achille, and really, he's like a legend here at Prep. So you hear these stories, and then my daughter was lucky enough to have him in the 8th grade honors program last year,
nice.
and he's fabulous. It's like, oh, well, all the rumors are true, and how great is it that an entire population of students now has the benefit of being taught by somebody like Bob Achille.
Yep.
So it's really, these are, I think of these as like full circle moments.
Yes.
So it's really terrific.
Yeah. That's really cool to hear, and I agree. I think one of the things that, like we were saying, those people that have been here for so long just really make a difference to the mission of the school and being committed to it. So you played a number of different sports that I was listing off, and you're part of a lot of clubs. Yeah. Seems like you kept yourself quite busy when you were...
Well, and that was easy to do at Villa. It was easy to do at Villa. You wanted to be... Villa, I think, has always been great about fostering this sense of a very tight-knit community where it's much less a school and more of a family, a larger extended non-blood related family of individuals, students, faculty, administrators. So for most people, they enjoyed being tied into every part of the community that they could be.
Right.
So, for example, I played soccer and I ran track. And for a couple of years, I also did diving to fill up some time in the winter. But when you were off season for a sport, well, then you were part of TAC or the pep club because you wanted to support your friends who were also leading in those events at the time. So it was easy to feel well connected and a part of that community. In fact, I had a friend at Villa who I played soccer with, Natalie Padalino. Yep. She graduated a year before me. We ended up at Allegheny together. We played soccer at Allegheny together. Nice. And her sister's daughter, Alexa, graduated last year from Prep. She's at Kentucky now. She's a friend of my daughter. She's operating as a mentor to my daughter, who's a senior. And again, it's these connection points. They exist and I think grow beyond high school.
Yes.
But high school is the catalyst and the launching point for those those lifelong bonds
Yeah.
and relationships.
You make those connections now, but I mean, when you're in the community and you say you're somebody who went to prep or you're somebody who went to Villa, it means a little more when you're also somebody who went to one of those schools, because you understand you're just a part of the same family, the same community, and you look out for one another a different way than you would somebody else. And it's just that brotherhood, that sisterhood. It's real and it's so important.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we were jokingly saying that I was the launching pad to
No, only partly yourself, Jimmy. There's some truth to that too.
So what was it then, the real story, but how it led to you? How did you become a part of the board and then even the chairwoman of the board? Can you talk us through how you got connected to the school that way to be a part of it?
Sure. So my daughters, obviously, with my joining the board, basically coincided, and I'm not sure there was any particular reason for this other than it just happened to be the timing. I wasn't necessarily looking to become part of the board, but I was looking to become more engaged in the high school, as I had a daughter who was preparing to go to high school, and she was really excited about going to Villa. And Mark Kuhar, who was a prep board member, he is a friend. He's also an attorney for my business. I've known Mark for a long, long time. And he had several conversations with me about why I should consider board service at the school, at prep per se. And so I was giving this some thought, and just the timing was right. And so I became a part of the board. And shortly thereafter, there were a couple of members who were exiting and terming off executive committee. So I took a position as secretary of the board, which is part of the executive committee, which when Dave Slomsky became the interim president, he was the former chairperson of the board. I became chairperson of the board.
Gotcha.
So that's how that evolution occurred.
Transpired.
Yes.
And I think, for listeners, like, I was totally unaware of how boards operated until I really started to look into this. I mean, there's terms that within our institution that board members have. So there's a cycling process.
There's a cycling process, right.
So it's not just somebody's on here for 30 years. And
No.
Yeah, it's the whole process of getting into the board.
Yes.
And terms and cycles and things.
Terms and cycles, yes. Yeah. And what we look for as a board, and the board should be viewed as a group of individuals who serve as guardians of the greater mission of the school. Good boards should not be in the weeds and involved in the day-to-day operations of the school. That's what we have this unbelievable administrative team for. Yeah. We have a great president in Kevin Smith. Those are their roles and responsibilities. The board is about strategic planning, long-range planning to ensure the future success of the school, to ensure that we're upholding the mission of the school. Our job is to worry about succession planning and making sure that we have the right people in the right leadership positions going forward. And then also, to handle things like risk planning and risk assessment. But those are the duties of the board. And so what we do is we look for board members who have certain professional skill sets where their professional skill set can benefit the mission of the school, and to make sure that we always have the right number of people with the right varied skill set on the board at any point in time.
Yeah, well, and that's a great way to put it for people who maybe aren't as familiar with how a board functions and what it means to be a board member. Because I was one of those people a handful of years ago, I was like, okay, they're a board member, what does that mean?
Yes.
But anybody listening to the podcast, I would encourage you to go to Prep's website, go to About Us, click on Leadership, and there's a section there that it lists our board members. And, it's just, I'm very appreciative for the work that you and the board does for the school, looking out for the long-term plans of the school, the greater good of preserving the mission, all the things everyone does. It's just a lot behind the scenes that happens for the school to move forward. I just definitely apprate that.
We have really, I thank you for saying that. We have a wonderful group of people who have been willing to volunteer countless hours to benefiting the mission of the school and ensuring a successful future of the school. And It takes a lot of time and a lot of hours, and they do it without question. But honestly, it's beyond a specific person. It shouldn't matter who's sitting in the seat. The mission should be sustainable. And if you've done your job well, the school should be successful in your absence also with the next person that comes along.
Right.
It's greater than one person.
Yes.
So
there's author John Maxwell, leadership guru. He talks about one of the first churches he pastored, and he was a young leader. And one of the things that happened was after he left, he grew this church to 300 members, let's say. After he left, it took a nosedive down to 100 members.
Yes.
And he realized leadership isn't about just you being the person to make things happen.
That's right.
You have to create the processes and the culture within the organization. And his hopes is that when he leaves a place, it becomes better.
Yes.
That's the true role of a leader.
Exactly.
And so that's one of the lessons he talks about in a couple of his books that I've read, and something that sticks with me is that long-term planning about leadership.
Yes. No, thanks for clarifying that. Because not all boards function like this one does.
Yes.
So.
Yes, and it goes a long way, and it's definitely noticed by me and others, so it's awesome. Now, you've seen a lot of change during your time as chairwoman of the board. We alluded to now prep being co-ed and this new building, and we're sitting in this beautiful conference room overlooking the Student Life Center. What has been some of the most encouraging moments for you as chairwoman of the board through these last couple of years?
Just with that little transition, Jimmy? Yeah, not a big deal at all. Right. Merging 230 years of tradition together, not a big deal.
Little
at all,
did you know what was on the horizon.
Little did I know, right? Exactly. No, it's hard. It's hard to articulate the appreciation I have for the faculty, the administration, and also the students that have been a part of Villa and Prep, and now Prep over the last few years, because they have been models of individuals who have held their heads up and taken every additional change, and there have been a number of changes in stride, kept their heads down, and continued to do what they knew they had to do.
Right.
We have wonderful teachers who set great examples for students, and I think in many ways we have students who have set really wonderful example for the community, and specifically for our alumni on both sides, Villa and Prep, who many struggled to accept this change, and this was an enormous change.
Major.
It was, and I don't think we can say enough about what a significant change this was. What I will say is that despite this change, I did not attend Prep. I attended Villa. This transition has not altered my own experience of my 4 years at Villa in any way. There's nothing that could change the wonderful experience that I had.
That's a good point.
However, what I know is that there are certain things that I want for my own children in their high school experience, and whether they were boys or girls, they wouldn't be getting those opportunities at either the Prep from 5 years ago or the Villa from 5 years ago.
You're absolutely right.
So what we're building is something that is beneficial for young women and men now and going forward. We're giving them opportunities that they did not have at either school previously.
Yeah.
And we're a school. We're in the business of educating students and providing these opportunities, and we needed to make a change. And so this is very, very exciting for me, and I think that that now that we have a year under our belts, and the community, our alumni network, they actually have a view and a window into what that first year was like, and it was overwhelmingly positive. I think it exceeded all of our expectations. They say, okay, this is going to be okay.
Yeah.
So it's really important.
And I was talking to Will Patuch throughout the summer a couple times, and he commented about how this is the first normal summer that we've all had in like 5
without
years.
Hair on fire,
yes,
right?
Exactly.
Yes,
Between the construction and the consolidation and COVID previously, there's just been so much on everybody. And to see now the excitement of, like you said, we're in year 2 of this now, and year 1 went so great.
Yes.
I don't have the exact numbers, but our projected number of the incoming freshman class is way higher than what we were projecting. And it's just a testament to how great last year went.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. I think word has made its way around the community that culturally the school is in a really wonderful place. That our female students are doing fabulous things here. They're taking the lead in many ways, which is also exciting to see, and it's been an overwhelming positive experience. I think looking back, there are a number of things that I wish in hindsight we would have done differently. Initially when we announced that this change was going to occur, and I certainly take responsibility for this. I wish we would have done that differently. I wish the messaging would have been different, because this was just such a monumental change, and I don't think that we gave the messaging the sort of time and attention that it deserved. Yeah. Let me put it that way. Yeah. So we've got a lot of making up to do in that respect.
In hindsight, it's always 20/20, right? You can always look back and think about how we could have done this and that better. I think the bridges that have been crossed since that time to now, the work that's been done by the board, by the internal staff, by the parents, the community, to really push that message forward about what's happening here and the exciting things going on, has just been well received among the community and all the conversations I've had.
Yes. Well, we've moved from a model, I think, in years past, and culturally, this is how boards operated, this is how institutions operated. You had Villa who did things one way, you had Prep that did things another way. There were always just a few people making all the decisions. Yeah. And we've moved from that model of just boards making decisions, or an administrative team making decisions, to when we're looking at considering sweeping cultural changes, we've moved to a model where we engage constituent feedback.
Yes.
And that's critical. Yeah. The constituency, these are the people that we serve.
Right.
And we need to listen to them. We need to hear from them. What is important to you?
Right.
What concerns you? What are you not worried about? And we need to make sure that we're making decisions with those external factors in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a testament to that is even you look at the Villa Maria Project balcony.
Yes.
There was a lot of Villa constituency who felt like they wanted to see their name on the building. It was very important to do that. And we dedicated the space over the summer for the honoring the party on the patio that Villa had for all those years.
Yes.
So now our balcony is the Villa Maria Project balcony.
Yes,
and it's just
wonderful.
an example of you as the board, the administrative team, listening to that feedback and then responding with the appropriate way to honor that response too.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, half of our community historically is engaged by the sisters and from the charism of the Sisters of St. Joseph. And one of the things that we did this year is we invited a Sister of St. Joseph, Sister Mary Drexler. She's our newest board member.
Yes.
And this made perfect sense. This is a woman who was principal of Villa Maria Academy for many years, who has been a staple in our greater, larger school community and alumni network. Why wouldn't she be part of our board?
Right.
It's about, we need to do new things moving forward, but we need to be mindful to not forget about those communities that got us to where we are today.
Yeah. And I'll put a plug in for the podcast. I think it was episode 4 or 5. I had Sister Mary Drexler on as a guest.
Yes.
She shares more about her story, being a student of Villa, her time as a principal, and through her perspective on the change of everything happening. So I'll put a plug in for that.
I love Sister Mary Drexler.
She's amazing.
She was the 30-some years ago, I'll say that again, Jimmy, she was the assistant principal at Villa during my 4 years at Villa. So she, at the time, she handled discipline. Yeah. So she technically was the quote-unquote disciplinarian.
Yes.
And we feared her as students. So if there was as much of a shirt tail hanging out from our skirts,
yes.
And you saw her coming, you would run the other
panic
way.
Mode.
Yes, panic mode. And so the funny thing about Sister Mary Drexler, and she will sign her cards to me this way too now. When I was a senior, I was lucky enough to go on a school trip to France.
Oh, nice.
And Sister Mary Drexler, unbeknownst to us at the time until we got to the airport, we realized she was one of the chaperones, the disciplinarian. And we all thought, oh,
there goes the fun.
There goes the fun. She was an absolute riot. What a wonderful person to travel with.
Oh,
and
nice.
We took a tour bus everywhere. We were all over France, and on this tour bus, she would usually be sitting in a pair of seats behind our, small gossip gaggle of girls talking about different things. And you'd turn around and you'd see her little eyes between the seats, and she was just picking up all this sort of information. And so we started to call her Snoopy. Sister Snoopy. So to this day, she writes me a little note. She signs it Snoopy. It's really funny. So again, full circle moment.
Yeah.
Who knew that we'd be serving on a board together at
right.
some point in time in the future. So it's really special to me.
Yes. And at the school in which she was a disciplinarian.
Yes, at the school she was a disciplinarian. All right.
Yeah.
I still keep my shirt tucked in. So
yes,
just in case. Yes, exactly.
Well, I appreciate you reflecting with me on your time at Villa, sharing with us how you became a member of the board. While I've got you, I was hoping to ask some questions really about your experience in the business world and the community. You're very successful in what you've been able to accomplish in your career, and I think there's a lot we can learn from you.
Oh, thank you.
So if you have some time, I got a few more questions for you.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
So kind of a basic question, but just to start off this part of the podcast is, can you share with us your own personal definition of success?
Yeah, I think it's a loaded question, Jimmy.
Yeah,
I'm not even sure how to answer that.
Yeah.
I think to me, you're successful when the people that you work with are fulfilled and happy in their own right and feel good about the things that they're doing.
Yeah.
I think too many times success is viewed individually in a vacuum and measured by things like, or monetarily, I should say.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah.
So, you can be full of those things and happy yourself and working with a team of people who are miserable, and I'd say there's probably something wrong there.
Yeah.
So.
And I think that ties into even my next question is about, leadership. And, the question that I had next for you is based on your experiences. Can you share with us the role that you believe effective leadership plays in achieving and sustaining success? So that kind of ties right in with what you're talking about the team culture, where if there's things happening there that individuals aren't happy, they're not fulfilled, there's something missing. A lot of times that kind of has to go back on the leader of the group.
It does.
So yeah, I mean, can you share with us a little bit about what the role is in effective leadership with achieving success?
Yeah. Well, so again, I think leadership really, even though it's very individualized in some respects, requires taking the word I out of the equation. Again, it's about setting an example by what you do and your own set of behaviors without necessarily directing the attention to yourself and being able to do that inadvertently. So I think that it has a lot to do with your ability to naturally influence people. And it's important to be able to influence people through positive interaction.
Yeah.
And hopefully people pick up on that and mimic those sorts of behaviors in yourself.
Yeah. And I've always heard leadership is led by example, right?
Yes.
It's one thing to be the person that just says what people should do, and then behind their back, you're doing something different.
Right.
And people catch on to that. And
very quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They don't respect that. But when you're somebody who says one thing, and then you also do that thing.
Yes.
That catches on way quicker, and you have a lot more credibility with your people.
Yes. Do what you say what you do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty basic,
yes,
right?
Exactly.
If only people could realize it was that basic.
Yeah. Well, and it is. I mean, I think it all comes back to, you should behave, when people are watching you. You should behave the same way in private.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, if you're an honest person, it goes a long way.
So you've done a lot of different things, I'm sure, through your experiences working at Smith's, right?
Mm-hmm.
No relation to me.
Yes, right.
Growing up, that was always a question when you were a kid. Oh, are you related to Smith's? No, unfortunately not. But what would you say is the best way that you've learned to foster a culture of innovation and like continuous improvement among team members? So we're talking about leadership, but what are some ways in which you try to foster that among your own teams?
Yeah. Well, so we're unique. I should say Smith's, my business, is unique in that we have very low turnover.
Wow.
And that's because we focus on a culture of family. Mm-hmm. Despite the fact that we're a family-owned business, our entire employee group we view as a larger family. Most people who come on board, despite what their role is, tend to retire from our business, which is almost unheard of. I mean, I'm bragging a little bit, but it really makes us who we are. So one of the things that I think is just like it's a natural evolution of this sort of culture is that individually, people feel ownership in their role in the business, whether they're actually an owner of the business or not. They feel ownership over the things that they do in a positive way. So if somebody is a sausage maker and they're running their piece of equipment, they view that equipment as their own. If something goes wrong with that equipment, they understand better than anybody what that might be.
Yeah.
And that sort of care and devotion to the task at hand and the mission to make sure that they're making product that is second to none, that is safe to eat, that is high quality. These are all reasons that they do what they do every day.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to teach. It's more about the culture of the operation.
Well, that's amazing. I think our innate nature as humans is to have autonomy, right? To be able to take ownership and responsibility of certain things. And when people in leadership belittle you enough to not treat you that way, it's why there's a lot of turnover at places.
Yes, exactly.
But hence the great track record you guys have had of people sticking around.
Yeah.
Because that's the culture.
Well, we empower people. I mean, at Smith's, we make food.
Yeah.
And it's an enormous responsibility to make safe food.
Yeah.
So the food we make, I feed my children. I eat myself. I hope you feed your children.
We certainly do.
Okay,
we
good.
certainly
Smith's
do.
hot dogs.
Yes.
But this is an enormous responsibility. You're making food that someone's child is consuming. It has to be perfect. There's no room for error. And the message to our team members is that they are empowered to understand that that is their responsibility also.
Yeah.
And that if there is any step in that process that there is a question about, everyone has the power to say, stop, we're not sure about this. We have a question. And so when you empower people to understand that their role is critically important in what they're doing from A to Z, I think that affects, the sort of work life you lead and the way that you feel about the work that you do.
Well, I think that's so great too. I mean, you want people that want to take pride in what they do
Yes.
also.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
And regardless of profession for our listeners here on the podcast, like, you want your team members to feel responsible for their tasks, not because you're giving it to them, but because they want it to be their own.
They want it to be their own.
Yeah.
They want it to be their own. They want it to be perfect, and they're proud of what they do.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think that translates, I think that message, feeling pride in the work that you do every day, when you walk out the door at the end of the day, I think that's translatable among most careers.
Yeah, 100%.
Most industry, most careers. So
100%.
Yeah.
Now, through your leadership experiences, what have been some of the moments that you've learned the most? Whether it was one of the challenging times you've had in running the business or some of the most successful times, just kind of a broad question, but what are some of the things that you've learned the most through your leadership experiences?
Yeah, so I learned that, it's not a lot different. I think the lesson is the same here, but I learned a lot in the last few years throughout COVID and that experience. The school was undergoing, a massive change during COVID. So, we had a massive transition with the school, and then we also, on top of that, have a pandemic that we had to deal with.
Right.
So a lot going on there. And COVID was also incredibly difficult on the food manufacturing industry as well at the same time for different reasons. So you had, when COVID started and there were lockdowns, most industries, schools included, locked their doors and people worked from home. And you can't do that in the food industry.
Right.
There was little food available in stores on shelves that was selling out every day.
Yeah.
I still remember the day that it was announced that the schools were closing, and I don't know that this had resonated with any of us, that this was going to be more than a 2-week problem at the time. And I remember going to the grocery store that evening to pick up a couple of things, and there was no milk, and there were a couple of loaves of bread, and all the canned goods were gone. And it was shocking to me and scary.
Yeah.
Because living in this country, we've never experienced anything like that in our lives.
Right.
So there were weeks of coaching that in interaction with our employee group at Smith's that we had, where we would daily meet with everyone and talk through what was happening. Everything else is shutting down. We're not shutting down. People need to eat.
Right.
And our job is to make sure that people have food in their refrigerators. We have to keep going. We had to narrow our product line dramatically to only make a few things and to pump those items out basically around the clock.
Yeah.
But it became, interestingly, I think, empowering in some ways for our employee group to understand that their role was as critical as individuals in the medical profession who had to be at the hospital every day.
Yeah.
That there are certain things that just can't stop, and what you do is critically important. But what made this work for us, and our employee group never missed a beat. They are awesome individuals. They were scared. We were all scared.
Yeah.
They came to work every day.
Wow.
They never missed a beat. We never had a shutdown. We did not have the problems that larger food manufacturers had, where they could not staff,
right,
and which causes a ripple effect of problems in the grocery industry. So we did not suffer through that issue, and I think it was because of the way that we communicated. We listened to concerns. We had answers. We provided guidance the best we could, sometimes saying we don't know what tomorrow's going to bring, but we know we need to work through today, and we're going to get there together. And it was all hands on deck, and at the end of the day, I don't think that it was a lot different than the lesson I learned here at Villa and Prep through the transition, which was people need to be able to talk about things that concern them.
Right.
And so when you send a message that you're merging two institutions together, but you're not listening or soliciting feedback, that's hurtful.
Right.
If people can talk about why they're scared of the unknown, you might not have all the answers, but the conversation makes it much better.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, there's a lot there that you guys went through. And I think one of the things that, when you were talking earlier about culture and how your employees felt that purpose in their work prior to COVID.
Yes.
So when COVID happened, they didn't fall off the wagon.
No,
they were with you guys every step of the way.
Yes.
Like you said, other food manufacturer companies had some issues with that, but you guys had team members that were part of your family.
Like part of our family, yeah.
They were in it with you.
Yes, yeah. I can't even, it's hard to describe how fortunate, from a business perspective, we are with our team members at Smith's, but also with the support that we get as a business from this community.
Yeah.
We're very, very lucky, and always keep that front and center that that we are here to service our customers.
Yeah.
So.
And you guys do a great job because I'm always talking about Smith's hot dogs. Anybody who doesn't know it.
Thank you, Jimmy.
People are like, I don't get it. It was like, just try one, then you will never go back.
I know, it's funny. It's funny. Although we all have those things locally that we love. That if we moved away, I'd be probably shipping myself sponge candy and pepperoni balls.
Absolutely.
So we all have certain things, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I have an uncle that lives in Virginia, and we'd bring Smith hot dogs and sausages, and that was always his treat was to get some.
Exactly.
Can you also talk a little bit to us about the role of mentorship? So you mentioned earlier, I think your daughter being mentored by another student who's in college now.
Yeah.
But what is the role of mentorship, and how does that impact people when they're early on in their careers?
Yeah.
And why it's important to find a mentor to help you along the way?
Yeah. No, I think it's critical in growth. Mentors, I think good mentors are very transparent about sharing as much about their experience in terms of failure as they do their successes. And what's, I think, really critical is to understand that no life is complete without failures, and we all have them. Some of us have had more than others. I've had plenty of my own. And understanding that it's what you do post that failure that really matters, and it's all part of growth and experience. I had a really great mentor in my own dad. I'm really lucky to have been able to work with him side by side for a number of years before he retired, and I can say, I learned more from him, from feedback I received from people who worked with him or interacted with him than I did from him directly.
Wow.
And it was really just about the way he carried himself as a model citizen, an honest person, and someone who genuinely cared about the people who worked for him and his customers.
Right.
And it's I don't know that there's any magic secret to that, but when you see how that behavior impacts other people, it's pretty powerful.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah.
And to be able to be a part of that, and that's really cool. You had those moments, those years with your dad to serve as a mentor for you.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, that's really cool. I've always really valued mentorship, and I feel like, being a young professional, looking to grow your career, having people you can bounce ideas off of.
Yes, exactly.
Ask about their experiences.
Yeah.
It's just, it's so helpful.
Yes.
So, couple just last questions for you. I know that some of our listeners are either young entrepreneurs or they have their business owners. What advice maybe do you have for people who are young business leaders, young entrepreneurs, starting their journeys to success? And what advice would you have for them as they're in the beginning phases of setting up their career?
Yeah, I'd say it's really important to find an expert in your field and either ask them to mentor you or go to work for them. I think it's really important that people work for somebody else for a period of time before they decide to go out on their own. There are very few people who can go out on their own successfully and that they know how to do it in a sustainable way. I also think that the service industry and experience in the service industry at some point in your life is critical. And it teaches you a lot about human behavior and about how people operate. For a number of years, when I was in college, I was a waitress at a small private club, and then at a public restaurant, two different places. And it was great in college. It paid some of the bills, paid some of the bar bills too. So it was a great way to earn some cash. And but it taught me a lot about people. And it also, some surprising lessons about what you would assume you would get in terms of interaction from some people, and what surprisingly sometimes you don't get in terms of interaction from some people. So I think there are a lot of lessons, and it's also these are great coachable moments to remind you of how every job is important And these are good lessons in terms of how you should treat people
right.
down the road.
Yeah.
As you grow and become successful, you're going to interact with people who perhaps are in service in some form or fashion to you, and to remember that this was you many years ago at
Correct.
some point in time too.
Yeah.
Pay attention to that. That's important.
Yeah.
So
I worked as a sales associate when I was in college, but at Grove City with the Steelers store.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Okay.
But yeah, you learn a lot about working with people.
Right.
Oh my goodness,
exactly. Yeah.
Especially when you're like a waitress or sales associate, something of that nature. You learn a whole bunch.
Yeah.
But that's really great advice for, people who are listening to this and, they want to get to the next level of their success, and being able to know how to tie that into, whether it's working for somebody for a number of years first to learn your way, or having a mentor who's been there, done that, those different aspects that can really help accelerate your growth. All right, so last question for you. This is a fun one. So I ask this to all the podcast listeners, all the podcast guests that are an alum, okay? So it's a fun one. But if you could go back in time and speak at your graduation, knowing what you know now, though, what would you say to your classmates at your graduation?
I would say well, first, I'm just going to say I would never have been asked to speak at my high school graduation because I was not that kind of a student, Jimmy. But we'll have that conversation another day.
You're in good company because Tim Nicastro said the same thing to me.
Did he really?
Yes, he said the same exact thing.
That's really funny. I know it's funny. I've been asked to speak at a couple of honors assemblies, and I said, I don't think that I actually should be speaking at an honors assembly because I don't think I was ever a part of an honors assembly in high school. So, I think I would say, maybe not at graduation, but if I had some message going into high school, is don't sweat the small stuff. The things that seem very big in 9th, 10th, and 11th and 12th grade will typically seem, you won't even remember them 10 years later.
Right.
Focus on studying subjects that interest you. It will help you find your passion, and if you can figure out what you're passionate about, the chances are that you're going to be really successful in life because you're going to be doing something that you like to do.
Right.
And life's too short to be doing something that makes you miserable.
Yeah.
So.
And it's funny, I look back at my time at high school, like, why did I ever get worked up over
whatever it was? I know.
So that's great.
I tell that to my kids all the time. I have a 9th grader and a 12th grader. I'm like, I realize this is a very big moment right now, and you're having an argument with this friend or that friend or I don't even know what, but in 3 years you won't even remember this week. I'll remember how miserable I was as a parent, but you won't remember this, so don't sweat the small stuff.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's very great. Generic response, but
but that's great advice right there, and I think it's something we can all apply to our lives on the daily anyway, because don't sweat the small stuff.
Yeah. In the big picture, I mean, look at the school. Look at the school you're at right now.
Correct.
I mean, there are a million kids lined up behind you who would kill for this opportunity.
Absolutely.
You're very, very lucky. So find something to be grateful for.
Yes.
Yeah.
Amen.
Amen. Right.
Well, Sara, this has been fun. Thank you so much for the conversation.
Thank you.
It's been fun reflecting with you, talking about the function of the board. That was really great. You're able to share with us some of those different things and whatnot. And then talking about leadership, because that's what, the main focus of this podcast is, have somebody like yourself on who's very experienced and successful, and to share with the listeners about some of the things you've learned along the way. So we appreciate your time.
Thank you, Jimmy. Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Appreciate
Thanks
it.
again.
Okay.